Ah, mas cadê eu? Olha que legal. Mas tá atrasado. Nossa, tá bem atrasado.
And this had just been so hard for him. It had been so hard for his mom. And then he starts talking about his grandchildren and his fears for the world they're inheriting with climate change and everything else that's going on. Dr. Adai had expected this guy to at least bring up cancer, to at least mention mortality or pain, but it never came up. And at that moment, Dr. Adai realized, because he had asked this deep question, that this man wanted to have an emotional conversation. He wanted to talk about how do we feel. He needed to be hugged. And so Dr. Adai didn't actually hug him, right? But he did the verbal equivalent. And then Dr. Adai says, look, do you mind? There's some medical options I'd like to talk over with. Is that okay? And they move into a practical conversation together.
Mas pera, a legenda tá do...
Within 7 more minutes, the man decides to do active surveillance and never looks back. Dr. Adai's patients overwhelmingly now opt for active surveillance, his advice, because of this approach. And the thing is, we can do this in any conversation. It doesn't have to be an important conversation. It doesn't have to be life or death. We can always connect more and better and in a really profound way with the person that we're speaking to if we want to. Which brings me back to that experiment. So just to remind you what you're supposed to do, walk out of the room, find a stranger, ask them, when was the last time you cried in front of someone? And then as soon as they answer, you answer the question yourself and you tell them when you last cried. Let me just say, this experiment has been done thousands and thousands of times, most notably by a guy named Nick Epley at the University of Chicago. People hate this experiment. Nobody who participates comes in and is like, I'm really looking, this is gonna be a great time. Instead, what they say is, I do not want to do this. This sounds terrible. They're in an experiment. They basically have to do it, right? They're in the room. They get paired with a partner. They go and they ask the question, ask an answer. And then Nick Epley afterwards asks them, what was that like? And what people say are things like, oh my gosh, I felt so connected to that person, more connected than to people in other conversations in a while. I felt more caring towards them, and I felt like they were really caring about me. So why? Why is this so powerful? Why is ask?
Leandro, eu acho que foi. Só que eu tô tendo que fazer direto pelo OBS. Aí eu te mandei o link. Atrasa demais. Eu até tava tentando ver pelo outro computador aqui, mas é muito atrasado. Aí eu não tava conseguindo acompanhar. Você vê se a saída de áudio e a legenda tá batendo, fazendo um favor? E se tá minimamente traduzindo parecido? Que quando eu tô com 3 telas ao mesmo tempo, eu não tô conseguindo acompanhar. Porque daí o som sai numa velocidade, a câmera sai em outra, e a legenda sai em outra. Eu quero saber como é que daí fica só pra você, entendeu? Mas eu vou colocar agora pra tocar, então vai atrasar um pouquinho pra chegar, vai atrasar uns 20 segundos aí. Que atrasa, é. Nossa, eu tô aqui, eu tava tentando ver no meu computador enquanto o áudio tá no meu celular e eu tô com o YouTube e o OBS no notebook. Mas não tem como. Tem que ser outra pessoa mesmo. Tá bom? Obrigadão. Nossa, eu tô com a ciência por trás de alguma coisa de câncer. Do TED Talk. Deixa eu ver se eu coloco algum. Deixa eu ver se esse aqui tá com legendas. Ah, olha aqui, tem ao vivo com transcriber ao vivo. Uma pessoa mesmo fazendo ao vivo. Que legal. E mostrou até o nome da pessoa. Nem sabia que tinha como. O que eu coloco que é fácil, então? Mas, tipo, daily vlog, assim? Tá, beleza. Beleza. Então tá bom, obrigada. Tchau.
Hi, Bob the Canadian here. As you continue to learn English, you want to be able to talk about your daily routine. In this English lesson, I will invite you along with me for part of my day so that you can see my daily routine. And along the way, you'll be able to learn how to talk about your daily routine. So in this video, we'll go from the moment I wake up until about the end of my workday. This is part one of two videos where you're going to learn to talk about your daily routine. The very first thing I do every day is I wake up and then I usually press the snooze button on my alarm clock. When you wake up, it means you go from being asleep to being awake. But when my alarm first goes off, I usually want to sleep just a little bit more. So I'm going to do that right now. So the second thing I do in the morning is I get up. When you get up, it means you actually get out of bed. So I think it's time for me to get up. The first thing I like to do after I get up is I like to make the bed. It's always nice when you have your bed made. So after I get up and after I make the bed, I usually use the bathroom. This room behind me is our bathroom. And in English, you can say this a number of ways. You can say, I use the bathroom. You can say, I go to the bathroom. You can also, in Canadian English, say, I use the washroom or I go to the washroom. This is the one part of the lesson, though, where I'm not taking the camera with me. I'll be right back. The next thing I do every day is make breakfast. I usually fry 2 eggs in a frying pan. I usually make myself 2 pieces of toast in the toaster, and I make myself a mug of coffee. That is a pretty standard Bob the Canadian breakfast. So after I make breakfast, I eat breakfast. There's actually two ways to say this, though, in English. You can say, I eat breakfast, but you can also say, I have breakfast. So I eat my egg on toast, and I drink my coffee from my favorite mug. This actually says, Love the World, Bob the Canadian. This is from a friend of mine named Miroslav. Thanks again, Miroslav, for the mug. But again, every day I eat breakfast or I have breakfast. The next thing I do is I use my computer to check my email and to read the news. I like to check my email every morning and I like to read the news every morning. I also spend a little bit of time checking my social media accounts like Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. I probably spend a little bit too much time doing that. So this next part of my day, you are not invited to because every day I take a shower. There are two ways to say this, though, in English. You can say, every day I take a shower, You can also say every day, I have a shower. I usually take a shower every day before I go to work. After my shower, I dry off with a towel and then I put on some deodorant. After that, I get dressed. I decide what I'm going to wear for the day, and then I get dressed and I get ready to go to work. After I get dressed, I go back to the bathroom, and if I need to, I will shave, but I don't actually shave every day. But if it's a day where I need to shave, I shave. After that, I get some toothpaste and my toothbrush, and I will brush my teeth. So the next thing I do is I come back to the kitchen and I make a lunch. I don't like to buy lunch every day. I don't like to spend money. So I usually make a sandwich and I grab a banana, and this will be my lunch for today. So I'll eat.
Clica na sua fonte, tá? Segura a tecla Alt e ao mesmo tempo clica com o mouse nos quadradinhos vermelhos das bordas para cortar espaço. Nossa, o que que é? Alt nos quadradinhos vermelhos na borda para cortar o espaço vazio. Não entendi. Alt. Meu Deus. Ai, Jesus. Eu não quero fazer isso. 1920 para 1080, tá. Tudo mais overlay, tá. Mil. Hum, Iniciar a gravação.